Welcome back to the Weekly Huddle podcast. My name is Owen, and today we are going to be doing our first of the set of podcasts I'm going to get out. I'm probably going to try to do one every day leading up to the draft, which is 8 days away. And these are going to be kind of like draft cheat sheets where I'm going to quickly hit on different prospects. I've currently scouted personally like 210 different players for this draft class, and I'm going to go through each position by position and just when your team drafts a guy, if you need somewhere quick to go and check out, like, whoa, what is he doing or things like that, you can pop this on. Try to be kind of a little faster with these. I'm going to do every position, every different day, except I'm not going to be doing quarterbacks or running backs. Quarterbacks is because I've done several other quarterback ranking videos in the past, most recently when I was reacting to that franchise guys' rankings, and I myself gave my rankings in that video and talked about how I viewed each prospect and things like that. So I already basically did that one. Running backs is because in a few days I'm going to be doing a podcast with KeelPro88, the guy I do the Dynasty Index with, which is what we're going to be showing on screen for this episode on YouTube, to help us, go through and really show what I'm trying to talk about. And he is going to be doing a podcast where we're going to be debating running back prospects and things like that. And you'll be getting my list over there as well as his list. So right now, I'm going to be doing wide receivers today. I still have to hit some tight ends. So tight ends are going to be the end of the offensive portion of this. So it's going to go to wide receivers, offensive tackles, interior offensive line, then tight ends. And then we'll switch over to the defensive side of the ball with edge, D tackles, linebackers, corners, then safeties. Okay, that's all the note-keeping stuff like that out of the way. So let's just dive into this wide receiver class. I currently have 27 scouted. And I'm going to go through and just give you a quick synopsis or summary on each player and what I think they fit and things like that. The earlier players, I'm debating whether or not I'm going to talk about more of them more or less, because if you listen to anything else that has covered the draft, you probably have heard about these wide receivers already, and I either can talk to you about how I think they're going to be, but they're also going to be the ones that are going to be needed to talk about because they're first-round picks, so it's confusing. I think I'm going to go for like a medium kind of thing where I'm going to talk decently about what they do well, but also be like, hey, everyone's talking about them, and they'll be talked about on TV in the first round where most people watch it anyway. So I won't spend too much time on them, and the later ground guys, I can just give more of a synopsis kind of thing, and then I can talk about my gems and things like that. All right, enough rambling. Let's get into it. My wide receiver 1 with a grade of 85 is Garrett Wilson, Ohio State. I think between him and Olave, Wilson is the more complete receiver. He has the better run after catch ability, and he still has the deep threat to get down deep. He's not as fast as Olave, but he isn't slow. Regardless, I think he ran like a 4.39 at the combine. I also like his just route running in general, and he was worked out of the slot a lot, but I think he has the size and route running and release to work out the outside as well. So I think he is probably the number one receiver in this draft class. Behind him is Jameson Williams, with only half point behind, 84.5, because he is the best athlete overall in this class. He's probably the best with functional speed. Like, there's some guys who would have ran faster 40-yard dashes than him, but that speed for them, it's a track meet. He's going to be a guy who can transition that speed into his routes, into run after catch positions where he doesn't have to have like run a straight line, run a go route, or catch a screen pass and use his speed there. He can use his speed all across the field in all aspects of the game. The one things that I think keep him off the top spot is I'm not in love with his blocking and his toughness overall. He does have the alpha dog mentality when he goes up for like 50-50 balls, but when it comes to like fighting guys off in the run game or fighting guys off at the line of scrimmage, he isn't the best there. And I didn't really factor in the injury for his grade, but like I said, I probably wouldn't take him before Wilson and probably even Olave just because of his injury right now, and wondering how that'll impact his speed, which I know science has gotten better with that kind of stuff, but I'm just always, you can never be too cautious about that stuff. So if I'm a team in the first round in like the top 15, I might not take him. If I'm in the back half of the first round, I take the shot on him just because it's less of a risk. Because if you take a guy in a later first round, you can wait on him because you're probably already a good team. But other than that, yeah, I think he's one of the better receivers. Number 3, 3 and 4 are tied with grades, so you can put these in either order if you want, and I wouldn't argue with you. But 3 is Treylon Burks from Arkansas. He's not your typical wide receiver. He's not going to win with like sharp route running or overwhelming like speed down the field. But he's so big, he's 225 pounds, and he's just so good with vision after the catch that you can scheme him up touches and screen game or give him handoffs, design handoffs, run him on some crossing routes with some pick plays and things like that, and you can get him in the open field with the ball in his hands. There is rare, like his blend of athleticism and size is rare with the ball in his hands. So I think that like a team that is super creative, maybe with the trade talks talking about Deebo Samuel right now, he could go to San Francisco. I know he's getting like pinned in as like a Deebo clone, which is not fair to him. As well, people have been giving comps to AJ Brown, which I'm okay with that one. I just think a team that's creative and that can get him into space without having him need to beat a press man corner off the line of scrimmage with his route running would succeed the best with Treylon Burks. So that's what I feel about him. Chris Olave is a deep threat kind of guy. Ran a 4.3 at the combine. He's got great route running. Can use his speed in his routes. He's very smooth in and out of breaks. Never slows down too much. Can keep his feet chopping, except for when he's doing like a quick stop or comeback, where he's gonna go to get the full speed and then be able to cut on dime to come back and really lose that corner. I think where he lacks is just the ability to make plays after the catch. Like he's gonna be not possession receiver. He's gonna be like a downfield threat or somebody you just get the ball to him and be like, if you can get a couple of yards, go ahead, but he's not going to be able to make like super big creative plays, something like a Treylon Burks or Jameson Williams could do, even a Garrett Wilson can in this draft class. He's not going to be able to make something out of nothing. You're not going to run him in the screen game all that often. You're going to want him down the field running those deeper routes. Heavy play action teams, I think, are going to work best with him because they'll give him time to get downfield and then set up some like double moves and things like that where he can really lose corners. All right. Drake London. I was late to the party on Drake London. I had him as like a third or fourth round prospect majority of the year. But recently I went back and rewatched him, and yeah, he's pretty good. He's another one of those bigger bodied guys, a lot of Mike Evans comparisons. I wasn't a big fan of his ability to release in his route running overall, but he's very deceptive with his route running. I understand that now. He wasn't able to, he doesn't have the speed into his routes, which is what really threw me off. But as a guy who's as big as he is, he moves so well, and he's great after the catch. He's very versatile. They had him like line up in the wing position a couple times too. So I think that a team who can use him in the they're not going to try to peg him into one spot like he's a traditional X or he's a big slot or he's this guy or that guy. If you bring him in and just design a role in your offense for him, he can really explode and be really good for your team. Next up, we're sticking with the big body guys with George Pickens. A lot of people forgot about him because he got hurt before the season started, which also made him my first full wide receiver I'm just totally done with because I watched his stuff from 2020, had basically his entire draft, his profile done, then watched the few handful of games he did play in 2021 and just added that on to his final profile. But I think Pickens wins where guys with his size usually don't win, which is with sharp route running and good releases, things like that. These bigger guys sometimes can get caught up on the line of scrimmage. I think Pickens works well with his quarterback, but like I said, he's a bigger guy. Unlike Drake London, who's really good after the catch, I don't think Pickens is going to be the best, and he doesn't have the most juice as an athlete, so I think he's going to be one of their bigger body, red zone threat kind of guys who's going to be kind of limited between the 20s, where he's not going to be able to make those big plays for you, but once you get inside the red zone, he's going to be big-time player for a team who needs some size on their offense, who has like a bunch of like 5-something receivers. If you need a guy who comes in who's 6'3", 200, who can really go up and get balls in the red zone, I think he can be your kind of guy, like a Michael Pittman type of dude. And now going to the complete opposite, but still somebody who I think can play on the outside, is Johan Dotson. 5'11", 184, super quick in sharp cuts, change of direction, kind of things like that. People are afraid that he's not going to be able to work on the outside because of his height. I think he has a good enough vertical ability to go up and win contested balls. He's got a decent release package. But if you run out of the slot, you're not going to be sorry, right? If you can run him out of slot because you have outside guys already, that's going to be just fine. It's just I don't like that people are so low on him because he can't play outside. I think he showed that at Penn State he can play outside. He has the tenacity to play outside. He has the route running. I just think that he is kind of lower because, I mean, it might just be a product of the Penn State offense where they had not the best quarterback play, but I just didn't really see the production I wanted to. That wasn't gimmicked up for him, like traditional wide receiver sets and things like that. But other than that, I think he's just a really well-rounded, all-around receiver who can make plays in the run after the catch. He's got some good athleticism, and you can play him inside or out. I'd say let him fail outside and then work his way in, kind of like I do with offensive tackles. But I think that if you played him in slot day one, he'd still be very productive for you. Next up, I have Wan'Dale Robinson, still in the second rounds here, 80.5 grade. He's kind of like how Rondale Moore was last year, and I wasn't even the biggest Rondale Moore fan. He is a very gimmicky kind of player. He's 5'11", 185. Really good athlete, good returner. I think that a team that, like an Arizona or like a Los Angeles Rams or something like that with these creative offensive coaches who miss out on Treylon Burks can get an athlete like Wan'Dale Robinson, and even though he isn't the best as like a traditional wide receiver, you get him in air, in space, or get him on screen, in the screen game and things like that. I think you could, some jet sweep, stuff like that. You can really maximize his value. And as a player who does those things, he's one of the best. So even though he doesn't win it with the most traditional receiver kind of winning ways, with like route running, things like that, if you get him in the gimmick kind of offensive role, he will be successful for you. Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati is one of those big body guys, except compared to Burks and Pickens, I think he has the best athleticism between the two of them. And even in London, I think he's a better athlete than all of them. He's got some good downfield speed. He ran a 4.3 at the combine. I don't think he had that well of speed on tape, but he was able to stack corners on the field. He's got that kind of length and the catch radius you'd want from a big-bodied guy like him, which shows up on tape when he's beating guys for like jump balls and things like that. I actually think his route running is very underrated. I think his route running is pretty good. I'm not the highest on him as like this smart, savvy route runner, but like if you ask him to run some double moves or ask him to come back and cut on a dime, he can do it a couple times a game. He might not be super consistent, but once or twice, I think he can set guys up down the field and then come back. So he's one of the bigger body downfield threats who could really work on the intermediate game once he gets to the NFL, and you really implement him into like a system where you can capitalize on what he does well right now as you work on building the rest of his game up as he evolves in your system and goes up the ladder, goes from like wide receiver 4 to 3 to 2 kind of thing. As he gets older and more experienced in the league, he'll be able to do more and more. But he's coming into the league right now with a skill set that I think you can play day one and still get some production out of. Up next is John Metchi, who was getting a lot of wide receiver 1 buzz coming into the season from Alabama. I know he was hurt a lot, and he should be ready for the start of the next season. He does have some speed, right? He was like the downfield threat, projected to be anyway, before James Williams exploded for Alabama. But I think for Metchi, where I like him most is his tenacity. Even though he's only 6 foot, I think he can play on the outside. I'd rather play him on the slot, but if you want to play him outside, you could. He's got this alpha dog mentality. He's going to go out there. He has some decent route running. It's kind of regressed this past year, but I might want to contribute that to like his lack of change of direction, things like that with his injury. But like, he was the player who was at the point for screen passes. He blocked guys into the out of bounds, and then even then some. Always plays on the edge of a penalty when he's blocking or when asked to come out and play really physical. So if you're a team that wants to build a culture like the Lions, who want to be physical and go out there and punch guys in the mouth, I think John Metchi is the kind of hybrid between a downfield threat with kind of a gritty grinder kind of slot receiver that you'd want to get into that kind of system. So I kind of like him there, maybe as the outside guy in Detroit, and let St. Brown be the slot. But like I said, I think places like Detroit or one of those other cold weather cities like Chicago and things like that could really use a John Metchi III who brings that real hard work mentality. And up next is Skymore. Now we're into the third round wide receivers. Skymore is like a traditional slot. That's why he played at Western Michigan. He had some good production. He had some big play ability, which is when he catches the ball, he was just turn up field and go. He didn't run the most expansive route tree. It was a lot of RPO system there where he'd run a lot of slots and work off of the RPO passing game. So I didn't expect him to come out into the NFL and run these traditional wide receiver sets. It might take a little bit of adjusting to. But as an athlete, And as someone who has surprising length for his height, which is 5'10", I think he can come out and be your slot day one and then still be able to work downfield and be a good red zone threat with how he is with his speed to get across the field and still be able to contest some balls that are thrown up with smaller corners who are going to be facing him in the slot, because usually teams relegate or put their smaller corners on the slot guys, expecting them to be these smaller, like 5'8" kind of guys. If you have a 5'10" slot like Skymore is, you should be able to capitalize on that, kind of how people have been doing with bigger slots or tight ends in the slots, but still not sacrifice any of that speed or typical wide receiver kind of bonuses you get when you switch them out for those bigger kind of guys. I think where he fails, like I said, is his route running tree is very limited. I wasn't the biggest fan of his hands. His rack ability, when not asked to go in a straight line, it's kind of iffy. I don't think like him going laterally and making hard cuts is really his big strong point in his game. So I think he's got some limitations there, but I think that a team that wants to run a lot of 3 wide receiver with him in the slot with like a tight end on the line kind of sets would really enjoy him as the slot receiver. All right, up next, and guy I'm kind of lower on than most people are, is Christian Watson. I have him as a 75.5 grade, still around 3, but it's 2.5 points below Skymore. I just think that, yeah, he's a height, weight, speed guy, so if you want to draft him and then develop him, but like I don't like his route running. I didn't like that he performed so well against lower competition for only really one season, like for full production, even though he had like Trey Lance there with him. I mean, like, it's more of those small school bias, I guess. But yes, I understand his height, weight, speed is amazing. I just think he's more of a raw work in progress than people are wanting to admit. Like, he's not a first round wide receiver, because what I want my first round wide receivers is people who can bring the athleticism, but also are closer to being complete prospects now. This is specifically for wide receivers. Other positions we can talk about, but for wide receiver, first round is going to be high ceiling, but also a decently high floor as well, because wide receivers you can always grab those project guys like a Christian Watson in the 3rd or 4th round and work on them with that, and then if they start performing in 2 years on the road, you see that as a successful pick. But if a first round wide receiver doesn't start producing in year 1 or even year 2 or latest year 2, then you start to have questions. So I think Christian Watson shouldn't be a first round wide receiver. I can see why people would want him to be. I just don't think his floor is that of a first round wide receiver right now. I think he's more of a receiver that needs like a season or 2 of being the wide receiver 4 or 5 on a team who gets a couple big games over those 2 seasons and then finally breaks out in year 3 after he's had a couple years with the coaching staff and can really develop the rest of his game. After him, 1 point behind him is Makai Poke, Mississippi State, somebody I'm super high on. I love Makai Poke. I would compare him to a less athletic or less run after catch oriented Michael Thomas. They're pretty much the same size, 6'3", 200 pounds. Poke did play in that Mike Leach Mississippi State system, so people like to say he was schemed open, but when you watch him, his route running was smooth, it was crisp, he was able to get open on press man corners against his own corners. I think he is one of the best route runners in this draft class. And his release isn't bad either, so I'd like him as an outside receiver. He has the size with 6'3", 200 to be like a red zone threat. He does well tracking the ball over his shoulder. He does good in contested catch situations. I just think his biggest weakness is his lack of overall athleticism. When you get the ball in his hands, he's just going to run in a straight line and try to get as much yards as he can in a straight line. He's not going to try to juke a guy out. He doesn't really have that kind of ability. He's not going to truck a guy. He's not going to be able to run away from everybody. He's got this long leg kind of stride, which gives him the perception of being faster than he actually is. So I think athletically he's limited, which is why he's a 3rd round pick. But I think he has one of the higher floors of any wide receiver in the draft class. So he's like the reverse of a Christian Watson. They both got size, but Watson's got all the athleticism in the world with none of the real intangibles to come into the league right away. Whereas Makai Poke has all the intangibles and is well-versed in route running and understanding where to be and holes in the zone, because he comes from that Mike Leach system. I think it's a bonus more than it's a negative, because now he understands how to get open and doesn't have all the athleticism that you get with the Watson. Up next is another guy I'm particularly low on, half a point lower than Makai Poke at 74, is David Bell, the last of our round 3 wide receivers. Bell is one of those guys who has like the prototypical size, 6'2", 205. I do like his route running, but I think he struggles to separate due to his lack of speed, downfield. I think he doesn't really use speed well going into his routes. He's kind of a slow route runner. That makes sense. Where at the stem, he isn't at full speed. He has to slow down, and then corners who are like better corners can understand, oh, he's about to make his cut kind of thing. And even if they're faster guys, which the NFL is leading towards, these bigger guys who are still fast, these height, weight, speed corners, if you got one of them on him, they'll slow down when he slows down. Even if he does like a stop and go, I think they have the speed to catch him because I don't like his long speed either. But he's a bigger bodied guy. His hands are decent. I like his route running where it is now. He knows how to position his body well against the corner to try to box them out and things like that. He knows what his game is and he works well at it. It's just I think he has physical limitations and isn't nearly as good. He's not like as good a route runner as Makai Poke is, but he's a little more physically gifted. So that's why he was only half point behind him. If you took him over Poke, I would understand. But yeah, I think that David Bell is one of the guys I'm lower on in this draft class. All right, we'll do some rapid fire just to get through the rest of these guys. Started the round 4 with a 73.5 is Calvin Austin III, wide receiver out of Memphis. Gimmicky guy, slot dude, really great athlete, good returner. I think he's going to be very specific where he needs to be used and schematically wise. I think people who are he has decent releases, but like at the same time, I don't think he's going to be able to play on the outside against these bigger corners, even if he can get off without being totally jammed. I don't trust his physicality against those corners, especially at the catch point. He needs to be a guy. He's like Wan'Dale Robinson minus the size Wan'Dale has, which is 5'11". So 5'8", 170. I'm not the biggest fan of him. Trey Turner out of Virginia Tech, decent athlete, decent route runner, just like an average wide receiver. Like he's not going to blow you away with any specific trait. He's got size 6'2", 190, but like he doesn't really use it all that well. His hands are decent, if not a little inconsistent. His vertical speed is good. They used him a lot. He was a very limited route runner, so somebody you can bring in and he can be a solid wide receiver 4 for a couple of years until you want to move on from him. So he'll be productive for a team that's just trying to fill out some wide receiver depth. Khalil Shakir is going to be your more traditional like slot receiver. They used him a lot there, except they didn't ask him to do. I'm sorry, not traditional wide receiver, an unconditional slot receiver. Untraditional slot receiver. Oh my god, I can't talk. Untraditional slot receiver. They asked him to do a lot of gimmick touches with handoffs, and they never asked him to do like the option slot routes to get open because he's not the best with the understanding and dissecting zone to stop him. He's not that safety blanket kind of slot receiver. He's going to be more your guy who you gimmick up the run after catch abilities because that's his best thing. He's a returner. He's good at the run after catch. He's good going across the field where you can hit him while he's going in stride and turn up field. But yeah, if you're looking for a slot receiver who's going to be that safety blanket, like a Cole Beasley or something like that's going to work off your quarterback, he's not your guy. Jalen Tolbert, some people are really high on him. He's got some decent size, and he's got decent speed, but like I didn't like his play at South Alabama, specifically for one thing, which is his ability to play through contact. I think him playing through contact is like the worst in this draft class. Like, if there's a corner even close near him, his hands disappear. He's not really good with bringing down contested catches. His route running is okay, but I'm not the biggest fan of his run after the catch ability, whether like outside of going in a straight line. So I'm not the biggest Jalen Tolbert fan, but he does have some size and he's got speed. So I can understand somebody who wants to grab him and maybe try to condition him better as a more physical wide receiver. I just don't think that's in his game right now. Nor do I think he'll be able to fully develop into that kind of guy. Joseph Nagata, wide receiver out of Clemson. Big guy, 6'3", 220. I think he's got some decent route running for a guy his size. Not the best athlete. More of a traditional like red zone threat kind of guy. You bring him in if you need size for the red zone. Other than that, though, he's not going to bring a lot in between the 20s, and he doesn't have the highest upside to develop anything for between the 20s kind of thing. Whereas like a guy like George Pickens, he has shown in the past where he could be a decent route run or decent run after the catch guy, whereas I don't think it's really in his game. Jarrett Stearns is a your typical big play slot receiver. He went Western Kentucky. His numbers were very inflated. I think he led the league or led the NCAA in receiving yards. If not, he was number 2 for when he was playing with Bailey Zapp. He's not big at all. 5'9", 195. His hands are inconsistent. His route running is decent, I guess, if not a little less under average. He's got good speed down the field, and that's what I use him as, like really just like a deep threat to run up the seam. But I think as an overall well-rounded receiver, he's not that kind of guy. He does one thing really well, speed out of the slot. And I think if you want that on your team where you don't have a real deep threat option, but you're not worried about him not playing on the outside, I think you can draft him in like this 4th, 5th round, probably more like the 5th round, and add him to your offense and just give yourself a different dimension. Eric Uzakanma, I'm pretty sure that's how you spell it. Similar with Nagata, big body guy, same size, 6'3", 220. Not the most athletic in the world. Does his best work when he's allowed to run downfield, heavy play action, just run in a straight line because he's not the fastest. So you got to give him time to get downfield, and you just throw up a jump ball downfield, like 40 yards, and he'll go down there and make the play. But like in the middle of the field, after the catch, I don't think that's really his game. And I think he really has that one aspect with him that you can really exploit. But other than that, not really versatile. Kyle Phillips is a slot receiver out of UCLA. I love Kyle Phillips. He is only this low because of, I gotta go check my scouting report because I always look at it and I'm like, I'm surprised I don't have him graded higher because I really liked his game. Let me just double check. So I think the reason I have him graded so low is because I don't think there's any chance he plays on the outside in the league. His release package is just terrible, doesn't exist. And I think that he needs to play out of the slot. His catch radius isn't there for a red zone kind of threat. He does everything else well. He does good at the run of the catch. He's got good vision. He's got good route running. He knows where to be. But like I said, he's very limited with where he's going to be able to play in the league. So, and I don't think he has the best like downfield speed, like where the Jarrett Stearns is. But if you want that traditional like slot who can work off your quarterback, be that safety valve, Kyle Phillips is your man. He's also tough. He's a good blocker. I really like him. I think he's a diamond in the rough. As like one of the last guys to be drafted in the 4th or 5th round kind of guy. Charleston Rambo, wide receiver out of Miami, 6 foot, 180, was at Oklahoma. Deep threat kind of guy, hands are suspect, needs gimmicked up routes and things like that, like pick routes to be able to get open, doesn't get open with his routes all that often. Not the biggest fan of him. Did get some buzz after the Shrine Bowl, but I think he's an athlete that will need, he's a decent athlete who will need like a really good system to really maximize what he's going to be doing. Justin Ross, not a fan. He was getting wide receiver 1 buzz before the season started too, which feels so far long ago. He's been hurt every year at Clemson. He had one good year, which was his freshman year with Trevor Lawrence, and ever since then he's been out. He's got size, 6'4", 205. I wasn't a big fan of his route running. I wasn't a big fan of his athleticism. He's a 6th round kind of guy for me. If you think you can get him back to his freshman year form, despite having 2 years of injury-riddled production now, go for it. Take a swing on late day 3, but like I wouldn't have him on my board just because of the injury concerns. And it's not like I'm not putting injury in as an impact on his grade. It's just that the game I saw when he was playing wasn't the best, and I was hoping that he'd be able to come out and evolve as the time went on while he was at school, and he just didn't because he wasn't on the field. So I can only look at what I saw because he wasn't able to put any new tape out there. Mike Harley from Florida, gimmick slot wide receiver kind of guy. Decent athlete, but really can't make any production by himself without being gimmicked the routes and things like that with sweeps or pick routes or screens. Hands are suspect, especially when in contact, so not the biggest fan of him. Dontario Drummond, same kind of thing, deep threat kind of guy. He's got 6'1", 220. He's bigger bodied. I think he's just more of like a... Oh, who was that wide receiver? He played for... now it's going to bother me. He played for the Bills, played for the Cowboys. He was a deep threat back in 2016, 2015. He had a couple good games, but you never really thought of him as a elite wide receiver kind of guy. I think that's what you're getting from Dontario Drummond. He's going to be more of a special teamer if he's going to stick on a roster. And then my final wide receiver is Kevin Austin Jr., brings some size, 6'2", 215. Isn't the best route runner, does his best work down the field when he's in contested catch situations, but he's like a 60-40 kind of guy when it comes to that. Rack ability isn't really there. Route running, like I said, outside of deep down the field or slants, wasn't asked to do much. And I think his catch radius, despite being larger, isn't the best. So those are my 27 wide receivers. I quickly try to go through them as fast as I could. That's your cheat sheet for this year's NFL draft. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be able to put this out today, the day I'm recording this, and then I'm going to be doing all those other ones like I was saying, one for each day of the week heading up to the draft. It is 8 days away, and I have 8 videos coming out on top of other things like the sleeper teams, as well as some other things I'm doing with Christian, who's coming back on. And yeah, I have some stuff going on with Kill Pro. I'm very busy right now with the draft, so stay tuned. And if you like this, stay tuned tomorrow for offensive tackles.